Hello and welcome to Infrastructure Matters by IPWA, the podcast dedicated to exploring the dynamic world of infrastructure, asset management and public works. I'm your host, David Jenkins, Chief Executive, and in today's episode we bring you an exciting discussion from the Melbourne Public Works Conference 2024. We're joined by special guests Leigh Carnall and Paul Clyne for Civiltech Solutions and CEO Daniel Pelaez from Cyvl.ai. We delve into the innovative technologies that are transforming how we manage and maintain public infrastructure, from 3D laser scanning to lidar sensors and panoramic cameras. Discover how these advancements are revolutionizing road inspections and asset management. So grab a coffee, sit back, and let's explore the future of infrastructure together. Okay, so I'm delighted that we're actually doing our podcast series from the Melbourne Convention Centre here in Melbourne. Our International Public Works Conference, our 2024 conference here in Melbourne. And as special guests, I've got the gentleman here from Civiltech Solutions and Cyvl.ai talking to us all about infrastructure, but also more importantly, infrastructure and how the use of new technologies can certainly influence the efficiency or otherwise of managing infrastructure assets. So what I'm going to do is pass it over and maybe you could do a brief introduction to yourself, Leigh, Paul and Daniel. So Leigh, maybe go first.
Yeah, g'day. Thanks, David. Leigh Carnall down from Darwin. We're a civil engineering consultancy, and we've been in civil infrastructure delivery for the last 20-odd years.
G'day, Paul Clyne, also down from Darwin. Been giving Leigh a hand with Civiltech with the introduction of the AI into Australia, but have a strong background in road surfacing, more so asphalt, spray seal, road construction.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Daniel Pelaez, founder CEO of Cyvl.ai, a startup based in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. Really what we do is we help governments and civil engineering firms digitize physical infrastructure very easily and just make it easier to manage and build great infrastructure. We'll talk more about the tech in a bit.
Excellent. And Daniel, it's great to have you here. I know that you took a bit of a journey to get here, so it's excellent to have you. And there's a number of people actually from America, North America, and Canada with us as well. So, look, why are you gents? What's the importance of coming? And you've come a long way, Daniel. What's the importance of this particular conference, the International Public Works Conference?
Yeah, first and foremost was the tech and understanding how tech is being used to value our assets and understand what our infrastructure assets are doing in Australia. For us personally, it's about meeting up with Daniel and introducing the Cyvl.ai sensor to the Australian market.
And in terms, and let's dig into that a little bit deeper. So, I've talked with other guests before about the influence of emerging technologies and the importance of when we're thinking about not just developing infrastructure assets, but also managing them over the long term. How do you see that all playing out? I mean, I guess it's an efficiency driver. Typically if you don't know what assets you have or what condition they're in, how are you going to be able to measure them going forward? But sort of in your own words, where do you see new technologies being able to help influence and how we manage infrastructure going forward?
Yeah, sure. So, what we measure matters is important. We are moving into a phase where we really don't know what's happening with our local government roads. We have a good understanding of our state government roads, but the Grattan Institute report from last year said that there was a shortage of engineers, and that was also leading to a lack of knowledge on our infrastructure, on our local government road network, and based on that, we are, our assets are declining, and if we don't know what state they're in, then we can't understand and introduce a remedy around that.
And when I introduce, I mean, I've in layman's terms, I've just said new technologies, right? It's more complex than that. And Daniel, you just said AI. Can you break when I talk about rather, and I talk about broad new technologies? What do we mean by that? What specifically are we talking about?
Yeah, and I'll relate it to the last question a bit. So similar to what Leigh said, the reason we started our company was to help specifically the local governments, the municipalities. And same deal in the U.S. as we're seeing in Australia, the federal and state governments, they have mandates to, inspect these roadways every year, every other year. But at the local level, they just don't have the resources to do that. The huge problem we saw was, roadways as an asset class is the most valuable asset in the U.S. We've invested hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars into these roads to, keep the economy moving. Again, I'm sure that's consistent here in Australia. So the technology we focused on was making it as easy as possible to inspect roadways on a regular basis, as frequently as annually, quarterly, or even monthly. And as we all know here, you don't need a huge background in technology to know that more data is just going to help you have a better informed decision at the end of the day. So again, in the US, they're capturing data manually every 3, 5, sometimes every 10 years. Those years in between, we're wasting millions of dollars in terms of repairs. No idea how to prioritize or optimize our budgets. And government budgets are so tight as they are. So every dollar, every penny really counts. So really what we focused on, you mind if I put the sensor here? I know this is maybe a visual podcast, but it's making that whole digitization very easy. And the technology we're using is really robotics technologies at its core. That was my background in undergrad. So we're using 3D laser scanning LiDAR sensors that you're going to find really on self-driving cars. These are low-cost LiDARs that can capture 3D surfaces of the environment at driving speeds. And then a panoramic 360-degree high-resolution camera, similar to Google Street View. Paired with a high-end GPS device, really we're fusing these 3 data sources to allow anybody, you don't need a PhD in pavements to use this thing. You could drive around, capture information on roadways very quickly, and then we've developed algorithms, and now we've really Australianized them with Leigh, specific to Australian roadways, to pick out those sort of defects that are needed to create those budgets at the end of the day, and taking a multi-year process down to really just a few weeks. So that's really what we're talking about in terms of technology here.
And when you say collection of data, how is that then interpreted? How has that come? Because there's not a shortage of data out there, but then how is that then used effectively to help engineers and help?
Yeah.
How's that done?
Yeah, I think that's a super important point to make. Is there have been companies in the past that they have great sensors on the roadways or on other infrastructure assets, and they're just creating sort of a mess of data. There's lots of data points, but it's not clear to the end user, whether that is the engineer, the government, what am I supposed to do with all this information? So what we try to do, while we are collecting millions and billions of data points from this sensor device, we're running them through these algorithms that we've built up over the last probably 5 years now, hand in hand with the governments and engineers, so that we're filtering out really the data points that matter. So giving them very clear, informed reports as to this is the ranking of your roads in terms of conditions. This is very clearly the types of defects they have, and then making it very easy for a consulting firm like Leigh or another one to say, all right, we can prescribe these treatments, easy, cost of materials, we know that, multiply it out, and now we have a pretty clear, what's our game plan going forward. People can dive into the details as much as they want for the data, but it's a very clear outcome at the end of the day.
And what's the take-up been in the US?
Oh, it's been amazing. So we started really first sort of sales in 2021, a year after my co-founders and I graduated college. And first year in business, we did around $500,000 just really in the governments around us, because it was the first time they saw a solution like this. And it's kind of spread like wildfire, quadrupling in growth through 2023. And we're seeing a great trajectory through 2024. And, now's the time to test out other markets. Australia was really top of the list for us to test out expansion. And we're going to see how it goes this year with Leigh and Paul.
And why Australia? What was it that you thought, okay, that's the next market we want to look at?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, persistence and excitement from Leigh. And just, he reached out to us about a year ago through our website, say, hey, I don't even know how you found us, through LinkedIn or something like that, and was just enamored by the technology and said, hey, Australia really needs something like this at this time. This seems like the perfect solution. And, we knew it would take a little bit of development to modify the algorithms from North American infrastructure to Australian. But fortunately, through some preliminary research we did, we saw actually roadways are pretty similar in Australia, how they're constructed compared to North America. So it wasn't too much of a lift for us versus if we went to Europe. That was the two reasons. Infrastructure is similar, but again, Leigh was just like, we got to have this, such a big advocate.
And I mean, this is an international conference. We've got people from all over the world. How you've just talked about the success, the uptake that you've had in the US. It's not always super quick to adopt technologies. How did you go about in the US encouraging adoption of this type of new technology? What is it that what sort of sparked the interest? What got it going? What got the momentum going? And how did you embed it within the organizations that you work with?
Yeah, I'll touch on that and then pass it to Leigh for his sort of strategies building this in Australia. But it was really working with folks like Leigh in the beginning, these smaller to medium-sized consulting firms that they're hungry. They're willing to take a risk. We've reached out to all the big guys in the past, the Stantechs, the AECOMs of the world. And, day one, they see technology, they're just going to question it. They're like, the old way, the old-fashioned way is how we should be doing things. We don't trust this sort of technology. But yeah, it's just having those forward thinkers, the innovators. We worked with a couple engineering firms that just ran with us. They started putting us on all their government contracts that they had previously won, and that's really what got us a foothold in the market. Then other firms and governments started seeing, hey, they're doing it. Maybe we should check it out as well. And that's really what set us off. Yeah. Yeah, Leigh, maybe touch on that.
Yeah, what was attracted me to your technology, Daniel, was the ease of use. That was first and foremost. Being able to involve a local government in collecting their own road network, I feel is quite fundamental. Being able to ship that sensor out to them for them to put that on their car and drive whichever roads they want to collect, I feel is really important. It involves that council in the collection and understanding their road network. They traditionally have officers already driving the road network as well too. That's another aspect. They're not having to get a consultancy in just to do that aspect. The use of the technology from the information. So the computer vision aspects can do really well at picking up potholes and cracking. The addition of the lidar can detect rutting in there. So areas that are ponding water, for instance, are going to be more critical to understand in a cracked pavement. And that's what the lidar brings to it. The addition of lidar means we also get the potential to do some preliminary design. So we can get some preliminary understanding of costing to remedy a certain section of road. It fits in with New South Wales, Transport for New South Wales policies on going to a digital infrastructure and collecting information down the road there. Main Roads WA is collecting lidar information across their network. The bits that are missing, of course, in each of those is the local roads, and there's significant local road infrastructure across those everywhere we go. So this is the way that we can bridge that gap, as well as get information that local councils really need to manage their infrastructure.
And do you see the uptake more within remote regional areas where there typically is harder from a resourcing point of view, capacity and capability?
Yeah, discussions across Australia. I'm finding that there is the regional and rural councils are more open to this technology. They have a bit more of a need, and it's ranging in asset management maturity level from organisations that barely have a centerline file of their road network through to guys that are organisations that are very far down the asset maturity level. So it's covering a broad spectrum of interest, and there is a lot of interest in this technology and what it can do. Yeah.
And we talk broadly RBWA, just the importance of asset management planning, having asset management plans, keeping them up to date, linking them to long-term financial plans. How do you and typically sometimes, I know this because some of our subject matter experts tell me sometimes there's a bit of we've got to get all the perfect data. Before we got all the perfect data, then we can start moving forward. How does this is more data? And I know I asked the question before. How do you? There's lots of data out there. How do you make sure that you? How does that sort of help that sort of conversation?
Yeah, I think it does. I think with getting this information in there, first of all, accurate and repeatable. We're aiming to be at a point for local governments to be able to use this sensor every year to gain information, and we'll be able to understand. They'll be able to understand how their infrastructure is being consumed over that period of time, and I think that what we're seeing with Asset AI in New South Wales is how this information can feed into programs like Asset AI. And that I think is going to be the future, automating as much of that data heavy lifting as possible, so that we're not having, so that engineers along the way are just assessing the information that they need to.
Yep.
So we use automation, AI along at every step of the process to sort out that information for us.
And Daniel, I guess I'm really curious here. You know, your background is in robotics, as you said. Not engineering. We talk about how different professions can and should be working together. There's the technology sector, you've got engineering profession, finance profession, and dare I say it, we just talked right at the start around green infrastructure, so the arborists, the urban foresters, and I think they all play a role to have a part to play in how we broadly manage assets. But how from a technology point of view, how do you see different technologies and the use of technologies playing out over time? So if we were to sit down in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, how do you see technology progressing, particularly as it relates to asset management? Where do you see, you know, if you're looking at some of the emerging themes, how do you see all that playing out?
Yeah, I think, you know, really why we started this company, one, it was understanding the problem. So I will say I had some experience working with the local government. One of the first jobs I had when I was still in school, I was filling in potholes, you know, manual labor sort of work. That's when I saw the massive data gap, if you will, and then taking those sort of, you know, these technologies I learned about in undergrad and applying it to that problem. That was the key sort of combination that we needed. Understanding this big and hairy problem of data, and how do we solve this with kind of emerging and innovative technologies. If we're talking 5 to 10 years out, maybe even sooner than that, it's the fact that these sensors, this hardware is going to continue to become commoditized, more affordable, lower costs, and you know, even iPhones now, they all have a lidar device. Most people, they don't know it. They have a lidar in their pocket. Similar to what cameras did over the past 20 years. They went from this, you know, monstrous device that's, you know, the size of a table down to, you know, a millimeter in size. So similar thing I think is going to happen with the rest of these sensors. And I think what's really going to be kind of a big change, and a big change for the better, is these sensors being integrated into the vehicles of tomorrow. So major auto manufacturers, and we're even speaking with some of them, they're starting to capture a lot of these same data sources that we're capturing with our sensor today. And it's figuring out, you know, they have hundreds of thousands, millions of vehicles traveling roads on a daily basis. How can we work together to take the data they already have, apply our industry-specific algorithms to that information, and then jointly provide this data back to the engineering consulting firms and to the governments? So I think it's just going to get, you know, better in the future in terms of how frequently we're capturing data, how many data points are out there, and there's no need to even pay for hardware anymore because it already exists out in the environment.
That's a really interesting point. So if there's if cars are looking to integrate technology,
yep.
I understand all that. So essentially, is the real value proposition comes from the algorithms? That's the real value proposition, right? It's
Certainly.
the data that you've collected over time, understanding the algorithms, working with people like Leigh and Paul
Yep.
to understand from an engineering perspective, and then you begin. That's the value.
That's
right?
entirely right. And we're such true believers in the fact that the hardware is becoming and will become commoditized, that the cost is not a factor, that we actually don't even charge our customers for the hardware. We give this away for free. We loan it out for free. We'll only charge for data processing, really the software piece. So again, that's what we believed in when we started the company 3 years ago, and that's what we're going to believe to be the future 5 to 10 years from now.
And you're speaking at the conference?
We are with Leigh, yeah. Yep.
Excellent. All right. And that, for those, because if we go out live with this, that is today, tomorrow?
That's Thursday.
Okay.
At what time? 2 o'clock on
Excellent.
Thursday.
All right. Well, look, and will you be going to other parts of Australia? I'm assuming that you come not just for this, but for other...
Mostly Melbourne. I don't know. I don't know if I have time to visit anything else, but I'll be back. I'm sure I'll be back.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Well, we're Well, we're delighted to have you. And look, thank you ever so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And I wish you all the very, very best. Sounds very exciting and very interesting. So thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another insightful episode of Infrastructure Matters by IPWA. A big thank you to our esteemed guests from Civiltech Solutions and Cyvl.ai, especially Daniel Pelaez, for sharing their groundbreaking innovations in infrastructure management. Today's conversation highlighted not only the challenges we face, but also the cutting-edge solutions driving efficiency and organisation in public works. To our listeners, thank you as always for joining us. We hope today's discussion has broadened your understanding of the critical role of technology in managing our infrastructure assets. Stay tuned for more episodes where we delve into the world of infrastructure and public works. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more engaging conversations. I'm David Jenkins signing off and reminding you that in the realm of infrastructure, every detail matters.